Come on in to Margaret McSweeney's Kitchen for Kitchen Chat, where every week you'll meet chefs, cookbook authors, foodies, gourmets, and just plain people who love to eat. And along with laughter, chat, recipes, and stories about food, you'll sometimes also hear words of inspiration, love, and hope. As Margaret always says, Kitchen Chat is food for the senses and food for the soul. So grab a cup of coffee, put your feet up on a comfy chair, and get ready to spend a little time with Margaret and her friends.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. This is your host, Margaret McSweeney, and I am just so delighted that you are tuning in and coming into my virtual kitchen. Today, this is one of the first days I'm out of the kitchen. I'm actually visiting some friends in California, and I am just so delighted that through technology and the virtual kitchen, we can connect with someone you will just absolutely love, Allison Robicelli, who is the proprietor, along with her husband, Matt, of Robicelli's in Brooklyn. Cupcakes you will absolutely crave. And they have a new book coming out this month, and it's all about cupcakes, a love story with cupcakes, 50 decidedly grown-up recipes. So, Allison, welcome to Kitchen Chat.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, well, this is just going to be so much fun to learn about cupcakes, especially your kind of cupcakes. I mean, I looked at some of the listings, and I'm like, wow, I never thought of a cupcake quite in that way. Like the Lorenzano, a fresh fig cake topped with goat cheese buttercream, fig balsamic gastrique, and crisp prosciutto flakes. Wow.
That's one of our favorites. I mean, a bit of background on Matt and I is we actually didn't start off to start a bakery, and we definitely did not start off to ever make cupcakes. We were both, I did an apprenticeship, and he graduated close to the top of his class of the French Culinary Institute, so we're both classically trained. Yeah. And we spent many years in fine dining in New York City, at the pastry station, and high-end catering and things of that nature. So we have really a plated dessert background, or a very expensive, fancy, more money than it costs to buy a car with wedding cake background. And this is just always, it's our nature on how we approach pastry. So the way we accidentally got into cupcakes was we had opened up a gourmet shop and a sandwich shop in 2008. And we had decided to get out of restaurants because we had two very young children. They were 6 weeks and 18 months old at the time. And we wanted to have a little bit more stability. And 4 days after our opening was the stock market crash of 2008. So we were desperately trying to find ways to get people in the door. And somebody had mentioned, and the story is in the book, so you should read it,
yes.
about doing some of our famous cakes again and going back to dessert. And we realized that nobody would buy a giant cake every day, much less like 30 cakes every day. Right. And we thought, hey, let's just, make them into smaller sizes. And then Matt's like cupcakes? And then I laughed because I've always thought of cupcakes as so silly. And then I was like, you know what, yeah, well, why, I never found a cupcake really that I was happy with it because they just always seemed very novelty-ish to me. It was always like, oh, look, it's pink. It's got sprinkles. It looks like a dog. And I don't necessarily want to eat that. I will say that, my husband and I we're sort of snobs of some of the food we eat, and especially you spend all these years with classical training in food and you become like, a little bit more picky, especially about dessert, because our philosophy has always been, it's a big investment as far as calories go, So
definitely.
You want those calories to be really worth it. And I don't want those calories to come from like shortening or artificial butter flavoring or things like that. Like I want them to come from real butter. I want them to come from real things. So we decided, let's just make the plated desserts and the big cakes and all those things that we love. But let's just try to find a way to make them into a cupcake, into just like something very, very small and individual that anybody can afford, Like if you're a plumber and you can't afford to go to a fancy restaurant in Manhattan, well, you can afford a cupcake, It was a way of democratizing dessert. So that was just always our approach. And we really thought we were going to make 2 to 4 dozen a week tops.
Yeah.
We thought it would bring people into the store and help them buy sandwiches and things. And within a month, someone had called us the best cupcake in New York City. And it just sort of snowballed from there. And only a few months later, the shop ended up closing, and we turned it into a wholesale bakery. So, you know, we make a whole variety of baked goods, but the cupcakes, I mean, man, they are just like, it's stupendous. And for 5 years, we've been in business 5 years now, and for all those years, people keep asking me, like, well, when is this cupcake trend going to end? And I'm like, I got into the business after it was quote unquote over. And you guys keep asking me about it still, and you keep buying the stuff. And you know what? At the end of the day, people they really love a good piece of cake. They love a good piece of cake, especially if it's just for them, and you don't have to buy the whole cake. Right. So that's kind of how this all came about. These quote unquote grown-up desserts. But
I love this, and there's just so much to chat about, and I love this new term that you have coined, democratizing desserts. That is so great. And as a reminder, listeners, desserts is actually stressed, spelled backwards.
Yes.
So
there's a chapter in our book. The book is there's 50 recipes, but also there's a bunch of essays in it. I'm known as a humor writer as well.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, it's memoirish. It tells the story from the moment I met my husband through, you know, falling in love to getting married to figuring out that we were supposed to make cupcakes to losing the store and on. And there's a chapter called The Importance of Emergency Cake, which I think is one of the most important principles in my life. And like
what
I said,
is an emergency cake?
Well, emergency cake, like you said, it's stress spelled backwards. And then there's just like, there are some days where, you know, I have spent all day cleaning the house, and then I put my children to bed, and it looks like I did nothing all day. There are days where I am just overwhelmed with like 1,000 places to be, and there's a million things in my email, and I'm just like, I can't do this. I am a 33-year-old woman, and I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. And, you know, you just like, God, I'm like, I want a piece of cake right now, or I want something sweet, you know?
Yes.
And this has always happened to me, and it's always happened to me at like 10, 11 o'clock at night. You know, where you've really run out of options at that point. So I'm like, well, I can make a cake, but there's no way I'm doing that, you know?
Right.
Or, so I will end up, and I live in Brooklyn, so I have some options at any hour of the night. You go to like 7-Eleven or the 24-hour pharmacy, and you get something in a box, and then you get home, and then you eat it, and it actually makes you sadder, you know?
Yes. Yeah, and sadder.
Like the cake has made you sadder, and you just kind of you're there, and you're like, I don't even like this, and then you look at the ingredient label, and you can't pronounce half of it, and it tastes like candle wax, and it's doing absolutely nothing gratifying, and you're like, I just wish I'd had the forethought at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon to buy a good piece of cake. So what I started doing at that point. There's an essay in the book about my children doing this to me one day, and I realized I had this awakening at 30 years old. I'm like, I am 30. I am a big girl, and I am the mommy in this house, and I should not be eating a box cake with my hands hiding in the bathroom. So I've instituted a policy that I will always have some sort of emergency cake in my house, and our cake in particular freezes really well. We've designed it on a chemical level so that the cake will freeze well. And, you know, the recipes are also rather large. It's just the nature of scaling things. So sometimes, you know, you bake a recipe of 24 cupcakes, you don't need all of them. So you take them and you freeze them, and you can put them in a little baggie or whatnot, but you keep them in your freezer. And when you have that moment at any hour of the night where you're just losing it, you know there's good cake in your freezer. And you go and you can like put it in the microwave for like 30 seconds at like half power, and you thaw it out, and you eat a good piece of cake that doesn't make you feel bad about yourself. You know, it's like having a life raft in your freezer. And it's even better if the freezer's at the top of your fridge so the kids don't know there's any cake in it. But, you know, like I used to have a candy drawer. They found my candy drawer. That one bit me in the tail really bad. They don't know about my emergency cake stash. And cake just feels special. I mean, that's why, part of why cake makes you feel good. It's not that, like, because pie, I love pie. Trust me, I love pie. I eat more pie than anybody, but pie just really doesn't do it. Because a cake makes you feel like it's your birthday. Or, you know, you could put a candle in it. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, it's not even close to your birthday. Put a candle in it. Make yourself feel better. This is what cake is there to do. Cake is there to be like, you know what? You're special, and you earned this, and you should have a nice day because you deserve it. And I'm like, thank you, cake. I will. And then I eat it. And then I don't yell at my kids or my husband as much. And I kind of let the thing that, like, you know, the house is not going to ever be clean go. And then I just stop cleaning. So it's a very healthy thing for me.
I love this. So everyone needs to come up with the emergency cake, and you have fabulous recipes and assortments in your new book, A Love Story with Cupcakes. And I would love to chat about the Brooklyn Blackout Cake. Chocolate cake with custard buttercream dipped in homemade fudge and rolled in chocolate cake crumbs. And first of all, I must ask, have you actually experienced any blackouts in New York? Because I know you're... Yes. So is this what inspired the Brooklyn Blackout Cake?
The Brooklyn Blackout actually has nothing to do with us. It was credited to a bakery named Ebinger's. Okay. And they at one point were the biggest bakery in Brooklyn. They had over 50 stores, if I'm reminding this. And to put this in perspective, Brooklyn, you know, we're a kind of a big city. I think we have like 3 million people on our own, but like logistically, we're not that big. Like area-wise, we're not that big. So to have 50 bakeries is gigantic.
Wow.
And they were around from the turn of the century till 1974. So this was before my time. And they were the ones who invented the Brooklyn Blackout Cake. And it was, you would bake 2 layers of chocolate cake, cut them in half. So now you had 4 layers. And you'd put chocolate pudding in between 3 of them. And then you'd put the 4th layer aside. You'd cover the outside with more pudding. And then you'd take that last chocolate layer and you'd crumble it up into crumbs and then just pack it all over it. So it was just really this mess of chocolate cake crumbs and pudding. So my father has, you know, been talking about this cake for my entire life. And you still see it relatively, you still see it a lot in Brooklyn in diners and in other bakeries. But most, unfortunately, a lot of bakeries, they've industrialized everything. So things come from cake mixes or from cans, and a lot of shortening, a lot of palm oil, and things don't taste very good.
Right.
So my father, even though he's tried this cake multiple places, he's like, it's nothing close to when I was a kid. It's nothing close to Ebinger's. Ebinger's was one of the last bakeries that like did things the right way. Aww. So for a couple of years ago, I was like, I want to make this. I'm like, I'm going to make it. I'm like, and it wasn't just I'm going to make it because people still make it, but I'm like, I want to make it so it tastes like my dad remembers it, you know? So I was trying to recreate a recipe that had been lost and nobody had tasted since 1974. And it's, again, all natural. There's, we make a thick pastry cream and we fold it into the French buttercream. So you're tasting a lot of egg yolks rather than, chocolate syrup or, shortening. There's a chocolate glaze on top. And when my dad, he's like, you know what, I can't really remember exactly what it tasted like. He's like, but I don't care. He's like, I don't care. He's like, my father, my father is the biggest chocoholic I've ever met in my life. He could, there's chocolate in the house or a chocolate cake in the house, and you go to bed, and then the next morning it's gone. And he'll sleep eat the whole thing. So for us, the blackout cake was, it's an homage to Brooklyn's past, but it's really, it's probably, I think, the best dessert that's ever come out of Brooklyn. original dessert that's come out of Brooklyn. And come on, it's chocolate pudding and chocolate cake. I mean, like we kind of win there. I want to see San Francisco come up with something that delicious.
Hey, and I think I might make that my emergency cake.
It's so good as emergency cake.
Wow.
So good. You get custard, you get chocolate, and you get cake in one bite. It's victory in a palmful.
That is great, and I love these stories. And the Lorenzano, what was the inspiration behind that? With fresh fig, that is, and goat cheese in a cupcake. That's just amazing. And prosciutto.
Yeah, well, we all have fig trees in our backyard.
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn, like pretty much anybody. We live in a very old Italian neighborhood, so I have a fig tree in my backyard that I share with my Greek neighbors. A lot of my friends, like their parents, have these houses with 3 or 4 fig trees, and they'll call me up and they'll be like, "I have gallons of figs. I don't know what to do with them." So this started a few years ago, and like right when we had started making the cupcakes. And I love figs; they're my favorite fruit in the world. Yeah. But the problem with having a tree is the entire tree goes ripe the same time, and now you have like all these figs and you have nothing to do with them. Like you'll eat like 6 of them, and then you're like, okay, now what do I do with the other 700 figs? So we started taking these figs, and we're like, okay, well, let's try to make a cake out of them. And the cake is fig cake is probably my favorite. So Matt and I, our sort of like little way of flirting, I guess, is batting around recipe ideas. This is how we fell in love in the first place, at a bar. It's like, oh, you're a chef, I'm a chef, and then let's talk about apple pie for 6 hours and how we can make it better. So I'm like, well, what goes really good with figs? And goat cheese goes so well with figs. And we had done a cupcake in the past with a goat cheese buttercream, which was just spectacular. So we had put those two together, and we're like, okay, so you have this really like sweet base, and you have this sort of like tangy buttercream that's really soft. So I'm like, you have 2 soft items, and you want something crunchy on the top. And that's like, well, he's like, what if we do prosciutto? He's like, not like a ton of it, but you just do a little bit, and you crisp it up, and that'll give you that bite, and it gives you the salt and a very slight hint of savoriness. Again, remember in the proportions. Yeah. You're really getting more of the sweet stuff, but it's just like that little bit of flavor. And then he was like, and we should do a gastrique for the top. And a gastrique is usually used. We use this a lot in savory cooking. Mm-hmm. It's like a pan sauce that's made with like sugar and vinegar. So it's almost like a fancy French sweet and sour sauce. So we're using a fig balsamic, and there's sugar involved, so it's sweet. But I'm sure a lot of you have heard of like strawberries with balsamic vinegar. Yes.
Like oh, definitely. Yeah.
It's not a foreign concept to use balsamic vinegar in dessert. So just by using a little bit of it, tempering that with a little bit more sugar to make it a little bit more sweet, you kind of get that acidicness. So because the figs are so sweet, you have those multiple elements that are competing with it. And this is a very old pastry strategy. You're really always trying to take elements and put them in contrast with each other. You have something soft, put something crunchy on the plate, like apple pie a la mode. It's hot, that's a scoop of ice cream on top. Or you have something crunchy, you want something soft, and vice versa. And the reason that you do this is that it wakes you up and it makes you interested. When everything's homogeneous and it tastes the same, you could like think of a cheap snack cake. You could eat one of those and just forget that you've eaten it. There's nothing interesting going on. When different taste buds are going off and different senses are going off, and you're detecting different hints or different textures and flavors, you become really present in the eating experience. And you kind of create that little moment, if it's just for a couple of minutes, where you kind of block the entire world out, and the only 2 things that exist are you and the food, And that's kind of the point of eating a dessert, So the Lorenzano, maybe it takes you a minute to eat, but you know what? You got that 1 minute where you're just all in, and the rest of the world doesn't exist.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just and the gourmet experience. That is just so exciting. And your book really provides French techniques for cupcakes and for pastry making. And so what are some other insights to the different French techniques that you bring out in your book that the home cooks, even the worst of the home cooks, such as myself, can actually try and delight in?
Well, one thing I make clear in the book is, and this is coming from me, who has been a student of cookbooks since I was able to learn to read, and most of my career has come from learning from cookbooks. I still read cookbooks every night. I'm still learning.
Oh, that's great.
But I'm a professional, I've been doing this. Yes. I'm doing this professionally for over a decade, just doing it on my own for maybe 20 years. So wow. I've got a lot of experience behind me, and I kind of know what I'm doing. And I mean, if this was something easy, I wouldn't have a job. Anybody could do this.
Of course not. Yeah.
So and cookbooks for me always sort of made it seem like anyone can do it, which I mean that's great, and I do feel that anybody could do it, but with practice. So we have recipes that are rated like 1 whisk, like anybody could try this. Like if you're going to start something, start this, and then we have them going up to 3, which is for more advanced bakers. And I say in the book, I'm like, it's okay to fail. It's really okay. I mean, because if you can just open up a book and just make whatever I make professionally, and my staff that I've been training for ages can make, I mean, then our jobs would be too easy. There's a lot of learning you do, but the way that you learn is by trying and by failing and by experimenting and by reading and getting a hang of it. And it's a lot of fun to do that. And, a lot of baking books, you know how baking is a science? You've heard that, like baking is a science. And
I failed chemistry.
Yes. But like I always, you see, like Rachel Ray talks about this all the time. She's like, I can't bake because it's too exact, And it's sort of given us this, I guess, mindset about baking. I mean, not only is it exact because it is an exact science, but it's also given us this misperception that if you follow the recipe, you're going to get the same thing in the picture that's coming out of the oven, and that's just simply not true. There's like a million different variables. It's not. It's like there's different variables that go wrong. There's, your ingredients. If it's a humid day, good luck with doing anything in the kitchen. I mean, baking is really affected by humidity and temperature. The ingredients.
Why is it affected by the temperature?
Essentially, there's a lot of factors. There's pressure, there's altitude. The biggest one, to simplify it, is with humidity, with the water in the air, especially with sugar. Sugar is what we call hygroscopic, meaning that sugar just loves sucking the moisture out of everything. Like you ever notice on a humid day you open up your sugar bowl for your coffee and you have a rock in there? Or, brown sugar, you open it and it turns into a brick? That's why. That's why. Because sugar is pulling moisture from the air. Trying to make candy during the summer is near impossible. Like you can try, pick the most humid day of the year and try to boil some sugar on the stove, and you'll see the steam coming out, and you'll see it getting sucked right back in. It'll make it a watery puddle. It's a pain, and it'll affect the way, things bake. Things will get, they won't rise right. It's a nightmare. So we'll have big air conditioners put into our candy rooms and things like that. But, there's ways around it when you know what you're doing. Maybe, or you get a bag of flour from a grocery store in August. And you know what? Flour also, it can store moisture. So when you're adding the flour to the recipe, you're also adding in a little bit of moisture. So when you add your milk, now it's too moist and doesn't rise as much. These are things that you can tell. There's no way to write this in a book to say this is what you're looking for. That's something that comes with experience. So I mean, right in the beginning of the book, I'm really I tried to be super honest about it. I'm like, it's okay if you mess up. And it's also okay if the things that you make don't look like the pictures. And it's okay, I mean, the point is that you're trying and you're having fun doing it. And, I hope you do get good enough to bake all the recipes. But if you don't, you can buy this book for a friend to make them make you the recipes.
Exactly.
And then also another kind of like hidden feature of the book is that on the cover it says 50 recipes for cupcakes. But within those recipes are sub-recipes, So like take our root beer float cupcake. It's filled with a root beer custard. You could just make the root beer custard. You don't have to make the whole cake. Or like the Lorenzano, like we just mentioned, that fig balsamic gastrique. Just make the gastrique. Put it on vanilla ice cream. Put it on strawberries. Put it over a duck breast. Everything. We have recipes for homemade candies in there, like malted milk balls and cashew brittle. We have recipes for puddings, for fried cookies, for homemade wine and berry compotes. There's a ton of different stuff in there. So when you read between it, you can, you don't think you can bake, but you know how to make pudding. And to make the pudding. Or, make a blackberry and Cabernet compote. Or make butterscotch and keep it in a jar in your fridge, And there's enough stuff in there that, you can play around with, begin to make your own cupcake flavors. And then, with the stories alone, I feel like it's a book that you could really leave on your coffee table and just read.
Oh, I can't wait. This is going to be wonderful. And another cupcake that really intrigued me was this chicken and waffle cupcake.
Yes. We got incredibly sort of like, we were already well known for our cupcakes, and then when the chicken and waffle came out, we had like a phenomenon. We had lines going down the block. And we were, at this point, a wholesale bakery. So we were only doing pop-ups and pop-up markets. Wow. And when we'd bring the chicken and waffles and announce it, we would have like a line going out the door or from our table, wherever we were, sometimes 50 people deep, and until we sold out. We'd sell out within 20, 30 minutes. Like we could never make enough to meet the demand for this cupcake. It was insane. And it was fun because the first time we ever released it, it flopped. It flopped horribly. I don't think people were ready for it. But, there is a story in the book about how we came about with it and how we initially thought it would just be like, because I love, this is 2009. So this is a long time ago before people were really like, chicken and waffles, everything. People were still chicken and waffles. Ew, why would you do that? And I'm like, no, not really. Like, I remember eating it when I was a kid, and I loved, like, if you buttermilk brine a chicken, I know you're not much of a home cook, but you know about buttermilk soaking chicken, yes?
Oh, yes, and I'm from the South, so I know all about buttermilk and the griddle, the cast iron griddle.
Yeah. So, like, a good buttermilk chicken practically can turn into, like, a custard, And chicken doesn't taste like anything. People forget, like, when you always say things taste like chicken, that's because they taste like nothing, You're like, oh, chicken's boring. I'm going to throw it in a bag of this store-bought marinade so it tastes like something. No. So chicken was like, I'm like, it's so versatile. I'm like, let's just try and make it sweet. And it's, it's our company, so we could do whatever we want. So we're like, the worst that happens, we don't like the flavor, no big deal. And when we came up with it and we did our first test run and ate it, we're like, oh my God, we're like, this is going to change food forever. Gigantic illusions of grandeur. But it's, again, were always kind of surprised that we would play with savory elements of food. But our philosophy has always sort of been, we have a lot of philosophies, if you didn't notice. Dessert should not be too sweet. Dessert should not be just some pure sugar bomb. Sometimes you need a little bit of savory to cut the sweetness, especially with the maple syrup that's involved with chicken and waffles. That's what makes it a brilliant combination. It's like maple syrup is delicious and it's got a beautiful flavor profile, but on its own is really, really cloying. And if you ever had it on like pancakes, you have a sweet cake with lots of butter just soaked with sugar. So it can be a little bit much. So to break it up with that salt and the chicken, which is like barely flavored, it really makes the maple taste better, because you're not hit over the head with it.
That's true. Oh, good. Well, this is just, I cannot wait to get the book. And listeners, I encourage you as well. And some of our listeners have come up with questions for you, Allison.
Yay! I love questions.
Yay! And talking about, how to make things look like the picture. And we understand that, yes, it's not going to look like it. But one of our listeners asked, what makes the best cupcake frosting when you're making them at home, and how do you get the French, or if you're using French buttercream, how do you give it the height like it has in the pictures? It's always just so beautifully coiffed. It looks like a coiffed.
Well, with our French buttercream is a little bit difficult to make. It takes time, and you definitely need a stand mixer to do it, because if you don't use a stand mixer, you're going to get burned. It starts with something we call a pâte à bombe, and pâte à bombe in French means you're whipping eggs and a lot of egg yolks, and you whip them till they're triple in volume. They'll get a very pale pink. They'll be 3 times the size as before, and then you're boiling sugar till it hits what we call soft boil, which is around. It's very, very hot. Matt describes it as, if you've ever seen the beginning of pop-up video, those bubbles, that's what it looks like. It's like sugar lava.
Okay.
And we drizzle that into it. So we're pouring hot sugar syrup into the egg yolks to cook it, and it makes this really gloppy, sticky mess. And then you slowly add tiny pieces of very cold butter to emulsify it. So it's not the most stable thing, but it's the most delicious thing. So the key to that one is to make sure it stays somewhat cold, like not ice cold, because you won't be able to pipe it, but you can't have a hot oven. It can't be a really hot day. Back at our original store, which was not designed to be a bakery, I used to have to stay up all night baking, and then I would have to leave at like 2:30 in the morning, run home, which fortunately was a few blocks away. I'd sleep. We'd wait till 5 a.m. and then go back.
Wow. Because
the temperature and the humidity would drop enough. Otherwise, what happens again, between the sugar absorbing the moisture from the air, and also because the fat butter, a lot of people think butter is straight fat. It's not. Butter is 80% fat, 1% these things called milk solids, which are important for another use. We won't talk about them today, and 19% water. So butter, the reason it'll start to separate when you leave it out at room temperature is because the fat and the water are separating away from each other.
Wow.
So that's how French buttercream is a more advanced technique. It's not the easiest thing. That's why we also have a recipe called American frosting in our book.
Okay.
And American frosting is what a lot of people call buttercream, but it's actually mostly made out of sugar. And we take somewhat softened butter, and you beat it. Our secret ingredient is some mascarpone cheese. Mascarpone tastes like a solid block of cream, so it adds a really great, creamy flavor to things.
Yeah.
Think of it like cream cheese without the tang. And then you're adding powdered sugar to it a bit at a time. And powdered sugar is, it's more stable than butter. It's going to help hold the butter and the water together. Mm-hmm. And 2, it contains a very small amount of cornstarch, which keeps powdered sugar from clumping. And that cornstarch as well will help any liquid that's stuck that might leak out. It binds it. So that is a great frosting to use if you live in a warm area or if you're a beginner. And the best way to get height is to pipe it. You can get piping bags. Some people say to use Ziploc bags. I find that technique never works. The people on TV will use it, and then you try to do it at home, and the zip side opens, and you get it everywhere, and then it just feels worse. It just never works well. Next time you're at a cake supply store or at a restaurant supply store, just do yourself a favor, go in and get a whole bunch of piping bags. They're like 20 cents a piece.
Okay.
Just save yourself the aggravation. Get some piping bags. Keep them in the back of that cabinet that you have all your crap in that you look at 2-3 times a year. And when you need it, it's there. And piping, it takes a little bit of work. It's surprisingly easy once you get the hang of it. It takes practice. And once you practice it and you know what you're doing, everything's gonna get so easy for you for the rest of your life. It's like riding a bike. You never forget how to do it.
Oh, that does sound good.
That is how you get height. Number 3, for people who can't pipe, can't do French buttercream, can't do anything, and this is my favorite cheat. You can take a little ice cream scoop. Scoop it on top. This is a lot of frosting, but then you pack it down, okay? Now, it's not going to look that pretty, so here's what you do. In some of our cupcakes, like the blackout cake or the chocolate peanut butter pretzel, which is one of my favorites, you're covering the top with something else. On one hand, it's great for texture, and on two, it completely covers up your frosting job. So what we'll do is we put the cupcakes in the refrigerator just for like a minute or two to like firm up. And then we will take a bag of pretzels and some peanuts, and we smash the pretzels up, and we put everything in a pie plate. And then you take the cupcakes out and you roll the entire top like you're doing an ice cream cone. You roll it in pretzels and peanuts. So now you can't see any of the frosting. You just see the shape. And it's so impressive looking. And you can pack everything down into that frosting. So when you get a bite of it, you're going to get the soft cake and the very soft buttercream and the super crunchy pretzels and peanuts, and it's going to look great. And that's just a good tip to do anything. It just looks bad.
That's definitely. That's a great
cookies,
thing.
cake crumbs. We do it with sugar for our creme brulee cupcake in the book. I mean, whatever you got. You have sprinkles. You want to use those? Anything. Just when in doubt, cover it up.
Cover it up.
And be like, I totally meant to do that.
Exactly. And the ice cream scoop, that's great. Another listener is having a problem with dry cupcakes and would like to know how you keep them moist, maintain that moisture.
That is a huge question. Huge question. It can come down to a lot of things. One, it could be your recipe. No, I don't know about that. You got to make sure everything is well emulsified as far as your butter or whatnot, but without the recipe in front of me, I can't tell. Two, your oven can be too hot, and that's a biggie. I actually give a tip in the book to find out if your oven's too hot and if you have hot spots and cold spots. Most ovens are calibrated wrong. Here's something a lot of home bakers don't know. You can actually lower the temperature of your oven, and things will bake pretty okay. I mean, I'm not saying like knock it down to 200 if it's supposed to be 350. But if it says 350 and you bake everything at like 325, things are still going to come out okay. It might just take a few more minutes, but it will come out okay. And it's better, it's a little bit colder than too hot, because too hot, things will, like the sides will cook faster and the insides will dry out. And then number three, and this one's the most important, you really need to keep an eye on things as they bake. What we say in the kitchen, and my employees, God help them, they always say this drove them nuts when I said it, but then they finally understood. They'd ask me, how long do I bake this for? And I said, till it's done. And they were like, well, what's that, 18, 19 minutes? I said, till it's done. Maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. They didn't understand how things could change. And again, remember we talked about humidity before? And we talked about the weather?
Yes.
That can change cooking time. The barometer, that can change cooking time. The type of recipe, everything. You always need to be on top of your food. Now, I'm not suggesting that you open the oven constantly. That's a big no-no when baking. But you need to keep an eye on it. If something says bake 25 minutes, but for some reason that day everything's baking at like 21 minutes, you will eviscerate the cake. Keep an eye on it. When it kind of looks domed, when it looks like the middle is going to look raw if it's not ready, so just leave it alone. But if it looks like it's spraying to the touch, go ahead, test it. Test it with your finger. Keep on top of your food, and then eventually you'll kind of realize, like, oh, wait, I have like a hot spot in the back left of my oven. I shouldn't bake things on that side. Or I need to rotate. Or I need to move things to the lower half of my oven because my heating element's on the top or my heating element's on the bottom and I need to move stuff. It's, you really need to get interactive. There's no panacea just saying like, oh, it's magic. It's not magic. You have to learn.
Right. Exactly. And what is your, your test tip in terms of, do you use a toothpick, do you use a fork, or do you just use touch?
I use touch at this point. I've been doing this long enough that I know when it's done. But toothpicks are great. I was never fond of the metal because I feel like the metal, like toothpicks at least have a little bit of a ridge, so it will pull something out. But you keep an eye on it. Oh, then another tip: if you're having problems with the particular recipe you're having, and you still can't get it to be moist, try adding an extra egg yolk. That is like, that's Matt and I's like big secret, because it has some protein in it, so it won't really disrupt the cake, but it has a lot of emulsifiers, has lecithin, has a lot of good fats. And it's notoriously what makes things rich and creamy, like creme brulee and all those custards. That's all egg yolk based.
Oh, the egg yolk. Okay, great. Another listener asked, what makes a chocolate cake really look dark, and what kind of chocolate do you use? Because you don't use the food coloring or anything like that in your recipes. So
it all depends on the recipe.
Okay.
They do have. Okay, there's a bunch of different types of cocoa on the market. One is Dutch processed cocoa, and Dutch processed cocoa has been treated with alkali. Dutch processed, we don't use that in our chocolate cake. We use a natural one, but you might have a recipe that calls for Dutch processed.
Okay.
And those, when you treat something with alkali, two things happen. Cocoa powder, if you've ever tasted it, just like the Hershey's cocoa, you taste it out of it, it tastes disgusting because it's acidic. So when you're putting it into a recipe, there's usually baking soda or something, which is an alkali, which neutralizes that acid. It also causes the cake to rise. Dutch process has been treated with alkali, and if you taste it, it just tastes like chocolate. The further you treat Dutch process with alkali, the darker it gets. So you could actually buy a cocoa powder that's black. And we did a black cake once, and you can't substitute the two. Chemically, they're very, very different. But you can use a very, very dark cocoa, and it comes on the market, so you can experiment with that. Another thing that we do in our cakes, which I think is really important anytime you're going to bake with cocoa, we mix it first with hot coffee or hot liquid. And that there's these great flavor compounds in cocoa powder, but cocoa powder is actually, each of these little granules, if you took a microscope to them, they're all covered in fat. So when you put scalding hot liquid and what we call bloom it melts the fat away, and it actually makes it more chocolatey. So, and you can add, if you want, a scoop of espresso powder to it, which will make it even darker. But that blooming absolutely helps.
Okay, the blooming.
There's all sorts of boring science I'm dropping here. I told you not everybody could do this. This is hard work. But again,
maybe I will stick to eating and not cooking.
Well, yeah, but this is the fun part about learning. I mean, I put a lot of this stuff in the book and these little science tips, and that's for me part of why I loved baking and why I went into it as a profession is that it's not magic, and the more you learn about all these tiny little things, the more fun it became. So again, you buy the book, you read it, you're smarter. And your other recipes will hopefully come out better too.
Exactly. And I'm definitely going to put a link to your book and everything on the website. And also, listeners, I just want you to know what an inspiration Allison is. And just by way of background, I know we didn't get into any of this, but I understand we're fellow cancer survivers. And I just am just...
Oh, you too?
Yeah, me too. Breast cancer a year ago.
Over the phone, high five.
Yeah.
Shucks, did it? Oh my God.
I know.
That's how I got into cooking. I was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's disease 5 days before my 21st birthday. And I had been going to doctors for ages, and they kept misdiagnosing me. And by the time they found it, it had spread to my bone marrow, and it was it was kind of scary. So you go through 2 months of being super depressed, and then all my friends were starting their senior year of college, and I'm at home taking steroids and getting fat and bald. And I just decided if I just sit here and I feel bad, then cancer gets a year of my life. Cancer wins, So I'm even if I only have a year left or whatnot, I'm this is still my year. Yeah. So I was well, I can't go to school, but I'll make my own school. So I taught myself how to cook, and I kind of knew how to cook before then, but all this science stuff I've been talking, I didn't know that existed. And I spent a year studying books by Harold McGee and Shirley Corriher, who ended up endorsing my book, which is bananas to me. And things like that. And a few years later, when I met Matt had been a paramedic, and he got hurt on 9/11 and forced into retirement. And he was only 20 years old and forced into retirement. Wow. So we sort of had that shared bond of okay, so cooking sort of saved both of our lives. And it's built. Yesterday was our 7-year wedding anniversary, and
happy anniversary.
You know, and I love him more now than I think I ever have in my entire life. Like we really, you know, he's my best friend, and he's my co-parent, and he's my business partner, and you know, I just don't know what I'd do without him.
Oh, he is your soulmate. And I have to ask this, did you bake him something, or what did you know?
Oh, hell no. I actually forgot it was our anniversary till he woke me up. I was like, oh, crap, that's today, is it? And the kids took us out for the anniversary. The kids came home, and they hugged us, and they said happy anniversary, and then they demanded we go to this restaurant that they like. So I put on a dress. That was as far as I went. I put on a dress. And we went and we had like this it's a great old Italian red sauce joint in Brooklyn. It's been there for 77 years. And the kids sang to us, and it was nice. It was nice. It was just like, I'm like, thank you for not killing me for 7 years.
That is great. And two other things I wanted to mention too. Goodness, I understand that you guys opened your home and your hearts to neighbors who were devastated by Hurricane Sandy. I just, bless you on that, and I hope that things are recovering much better.
Yeah, here. You know, I mean, so it's a different city than it was a year ago in a lot of ways, but it also affected a lot of what Matt and I decided we kind of wanted to do for the future and how we wanted to grow the company. And, you know, you have opportunities or options to be like, you know, to become like the next glossy mega mart, whatever. And we realized that we are community people, and we like creating community centers, and we like getting people talking about food and talking to each other and creating a space that's home. So instead of us opening a big store in some trendy neighborhood that would probably end up like the backdrop of some movie or whatnot, we decided to open up a store right here, again, in our neighborhood on the untrendy side of Brooklyn, in the shadow of the Verrazano Bridge, and like, you know, we grew up here. I spent my whole life here. I'm at my dad's house right now doing this interview, which is 10 blocks from mine.
Oh, that's
and,
great.
You know, we like for us to put good things, like, you know, one of the reasons we were so involved in Sandy was that, you know, we have a lot of connection to, it was all working class neighborhoods that got hit. For the most part, all the places that the rich people in Manhattan or whatnot, they were mostly like, they didn't have the extent of devastation that some of these working class places did. And they also had a lot quicker response from the government than the working class neighborhoods did. Oh. So where, you know, the working class was waiting for FEMA for 2-3 weeks, community organizations began to step in, you know, and we were one of thousands of people that just decided to do our part to help our brothers.
And that is just so wonderful. It's all about community and the cooking. You're right. I mean, cooking brings together the community, and you not only, you know, you feed the soul as well as the heart. So
and we're inherently we're storytellers, and we're parents, and we're a family, and you know, we want to just create places that are less about, you know, mass production and about, you know, really like smooth jazz and glossy countertops, and more places where people feel comfortable coming in and talking and getting to know each other. So,
well, this has been just so much fun, being in each other's kitchen virtually and chatting with each other, and also, oh my goodness, congratulations on being on Chopped. I am so impressed. I think I would faint in front of a TV.
I almost fainted like 6 times. That was, I will go hands out, it was the worst experience of my whole life. I have taken up running, and I would actually rather run from a bear than go back on Chopped. I was like, can I please go home now? Like, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's so hard. It's so hard. So I'm proud of myself. This is a testament to every person who has been on that show, every person who has to eat the food that they make on that show, to the producers, to the cast. I mean, Chopped is like, it's real deal. It is not a lot of fancy editing. It is very, very, very real, and it's very hard. And there are people who work their butts off on that show. And my God, I'm slow clapping for all of them in my mind, because it's just, don't ever go on Chopped, kids. Just stay home. Watch it on TV. Make fun of people like me.
No, there's no way to make fun of you. You are such an inspiration, Allison, and thank you for sharing all these great insights about democratizing desserts and all the great tips you provided, and sugar lava. I mean, I just am going away with just such an enthusiasm about cupcakes and your new book. And listeners, definitely go to Robicellis.com for information. I'm also going to provide a link to the book and Robicellis.com on my website. And thank you so much for being on today's show, Allison.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Oh, this is great. And listeners, please remember to take some time, and while you're perhaps eating your emergency cake, take a moment and savor the day.
Thank you for joining us today. If you're interested in Margaret's books, A Mother's Heart Knows, Pearl Girls, Encountering Grit, Experiencing Grace, and Go Back and Be Happy, please just click on the covers on the webtalkradio.net page in front of you. Margaret would love to connect with you and hear from you, so join her on Twitter, Facebook, her blog, or click on this website to leave a note and share a recipe. Thank you again, and we'll see you here again for a new show next week.